All rise. His Honor, the Court, this United States District Court is again in session.
Please be seated. Mr. Dooley, are you going to make an opening at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you're all set, I trust. Okay, bring the jury in, I guess.
Madam Clerk, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
You all wired up?
I need more wires.
Modern technology. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to remind you not to take notes yet. We'll give you notepads after opening statements are completed when we start the evidence. Now please give your attention to Mr. Dooley for Mr. Barney.
Ladies and gentlemen, the men who formed the Alaska Peacemakers Militia were, I believe, almost all Christians, devout Christians, and of the type that believe the end of the world is near, as in the book of Revelations. In fact, Coleman Barney's particular sect of Christianity has within it, he is a Mormon, the name Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's a fundamental core belief with them. And Mormons prepare for that day. They have various rules about storing food for a year, 2 years, and the like, to make sure they can care for their own family and not be a burden on others, and to care for others. Coleman Barney is active in that church. It's a central part of his life. It's probably equal to that of his family. He's married to Rachel. He has 5 children. Rachel and Coleman own Mammoth Electric, Inc. It's a very successful electrical contracting company. He is a gun enthusiast and an advocate of the Second Amendment. He joined the Second Amendment Task Force, which has actually gotten legislation passed. They give speeches. They try to influence legislation. In the course of that, he met Schaeffer Cox. Schaeffer Cox has, I think, bizarre ideas, but what I think doesn't matter. What really mattered was that the U.S. government classifies anybody who believes in sovereign citizenship as a domestic terrorist. Be on the lookouts, BOLOs, they're called, were sent out about Schaeffer Cox. They started an investigation into Schaeffer Cox and the people around the militia. And I'm going to suggest the evidence is going to show that they were needing to find terrorists. Now, Coleman Barney faces some particular charges, not as many as Schaeffer Cox. One of the charges he is faced with is conspiracy to possess grenades. and I should stop a moment and say a grenade is illegal. A grenade shell is perfectly legal. You can buy them at Army Navy stores. They're empty. They're usually a manufacturer's reject for some reason, and they have holes in the bottom. You're going to see pictures of an array of this collection of grenade shells. Those are legal. You can find them in places where they say, if you're in a hurry, take a number. And the joke is you pull on this grenade shell. Coleman Barney, you will never hear him say, I want a hand grenade, a real one, ever, in any of this. Now, he's been accused of participating in a conversation, we call it the Esther Cabins conversation, on March 1st of 2011. At that conversation, Gerald Olson and Schaeffer Cox are talking about grenades and other things. Coleman Barney, these are, we call them the Esther Cabins, he owns 5 cabins out there. He and his workers were working on the cabins. Coleman Barney occasionally shows up in this conversation. Hello, how are you? A longer conversation where he's taking a break. Not a coffee break, he's a Mormon. But he's taking a break, he talks to him a while, and then he's back up there working. And on the tape, you're going to hear sawing and hammering, because Coleman Barney didn't have time to shoot the breeze with J.R. Olson and Schaeffer Cox. That seems to be the connection to the grenades, that he wants to have a grenade. You will not hear that anywhere where he is saying that. You'll hear him there's some jokes about grenades. It's hard to believe there are jokes about grenades, but they had apparently 8 grenades were stolen from Fort Wainwright by somebody, and a rumor had it that the Peacemakers militia had the 8 grenades. They didn't. You won't see any evidence of that. But you'll hear jokes about it. Now we can do anything. We can get free grenades at Fort Wainwright, that sort of thing. But they didn't have them. He is also charged with a number of offenses related to what was in his trailer. Let me explain that. He had one of those big white utility trailers you see all the time, in which he kept shelves with his electrical gear, all of his electrical stuff. And he and his crew would use that on jobs. At one point, Schaeffer Cox moved his household goods into the trailer in preparation for his trip to the States when he was trying to leave Alaska and avoid all the trouble that he was hearing about. The government's going to have to prove, and I don't think they can, that Coleman Barney exercised dominion and control over the items in the trailer. Coleman Barney wasn't even aware of some of the items. You'll see photographs in which there's that huge saran wrap you can buy for moving, bubble wrap around things, stuff in boxes. Wasn't Coleman Barney's, and he simply had it in the trailer. Simply having it in his trailer will not be enough to charge him with possession of those things. But here's another thing. The things in the trailer were that he's concerned about were grenade shells, some liquid metallic welding material called JB Weld. I imagine everybody has something like it somewhere in the toolbox. and some unique brand gunpowder for reloading 9mm pistol cartridges. And it had some remnants in it. And the government's theory is that there we have a destructive device. They're going to put some experts on to argue that, well, if you put this with this, and you put this in there, and you do a couple of other things, we have a dangerous, destructive device. We're going to be chatting with their experts about that. I think that's a leap, but you're going to make that decision. The other thing he's charged with is a conspiracy to possess an illegal silencer. An odd thing. Silencers are legal. You can own one. You have to buy one from a Class 3 dealer. You have to fill out paperwork and wait for the ATF to give you approval. They check your criminal history and the like. And you pay a $200 fee, a tax stamp they call it. Well, Coleman Barney has, in fact, I don't think any of these men have any criminal history. Coleman Barney has 2 speeding tickets from his teenage years, and he would get approval if he had applied to fill out the paperwork. The $200 isn't a problem. To his surprise, he discovered, I pointed it out, that his company grosses over $1 million a year. He can afford the $200. He doesn't have to buy an illicit or illegal silencer. You will learn that you can see them at gun fairs or gun shows. There's always seems to be a table with silencers. And you can buy them over the internet. You have to go through the same procedures. And many local stores have them. So he thought it'd be cool to have one. But he wanted a legal one. He didn't need an illegal one. He doesn't need it off the books. He's also charged with conspiracy to kill, or correction, murder federal officials. And the key word there is murder. Murder is a special kind of a killing. And you will discover that not all killings are murder. Not all killings are wrong.
Your Honor, I apologize, but this seems to be getting into the area of argument as opposed to an opening statement.
Overruled.
And an issue will be what their intent was with respect to federal officials or anybody else they sent up. Now, you're going to hear about this happening at a place called KJNP Radio. You've already heard from Mr. Traverso about an Army soldier, frankly a military policeman, who had warned Schaeffer Cox of his concerns about the federal officials, because they want to shut him up. But they also had other concerns. You may think that it doesn't happen, but it does. In 1992, federal agents attacked and killed people in a family without warning them. Didn't tell them they were federal agents, didn't ask them to come out and be arrested. They sent in sniper teams, and this is a fairly famous incident, at least among militia members. It's called Ruby Ridge. And in that case, a man wanted for failure to appear in a court hearing was targeted by them because he's a terrorist. And a sniper killed the 14-year-old son, the mother, who was holding a baby, and almost killed the father and an older boy who was there. Now, this is common knowledge amongst these
Objection,
militiamen.
Your Honor.
Yeah, the objection is sustained, counsel. Go on to something else.
And it's in their state of mind. So when they go out there, they are going to introduce into evidence something called a whiteboard, in which they've drawn up what it is they're going to do to protect Schaeffer Cox. If this, do this. If this, do that. If they didn't put it into evidence, we would. Because it's evidence that they did not have the mental framework to carry out murder, but to defend. We're going to hear from Gerald R. Olson. They're also charged with having 8 fully functional hand grenades. This is the only evidence you're going to hear from that comes from J.R. Olson. We're going to hear from him, and we're going to chat with him about his past. I'll just leave that there. .37mm launchers. They are perfectly legal. They don't have registration numbers on them. Anybody can buy them. A convicted felon can buy them. They're available in stores, particularly marine stores, and over the internet. They are used for firing flares, tear gas, and various other projectiles. They are charged in this case with having a destructive device because it had a hornet's nest rubber pellet canister inside it. But the key issue is whether the launcher itself was originally designed or redesigned for use as a weapon. The hornet's nests are available in various varieties over the internet or in stores, and in fact the 4 hornet's nests that are involved in this case came from a store called Far North Tactical, also called Blondie's, owned by a man named Aaron Bennett. Mr. Bennett recalls selling them. Mr. Cox recalls Mr. Bennett giving them to him because Mr. Cox had bought a whole bunch of camping equipment and tents. And in return for this huge purchase, he threw in the hornet's nest. Either way, they came from Aaron Bennett's store. Coleman Barney is accused of having brought with him $5,000 in cash to this illegal weapons purchase on March 10th. Now, our position is they were going over to see this truck driver. They call him Han Solo, the Star Trek guy. They didn't want to use a real name. Of course, there was no such truck driver. But the idea was, JR said, jump in my truck. We'll go over to see if Schaeffer Cox's stuff will fit inside this truck that's supposed to go south with Schaeffer Cox and his stuff. So why did Barney have $5,000 on him? The day before, he wrote a paycheck to one of his workers, about $4,600. He gets home and tells Rachel, hey, I wrote a check to Adam for $4,600. Rachel, I understand this myself, but Rachel basically says, Coleman, I've been writing checks all day and that's going to bounce. They call Adam and ask him to hold off depositing the check until they can get more money into the account. And, of course, as part of his storage, he's got $5,000 in cash. I think he had 3 groups of them. He puts the $5,000 in. He goes to the bank, and he's going to deposit it. He's parked in the bank parking lot when JR says, "Come on over, we're going to check on whether Han Solo can carry all of Schaeffer's stuff." There is paperwork on this. We have deposits. The very first phone call Coleman had with his wife Rachel from jail was, "Can we get Adam taken care of? Make sure he knows that the $5,000 never got deposited." We have him talking to the Bureau and state personnel in an interview after he's arrested saying, "Hey, I got to take care of my guys and I've got to get them paid." The money that was on him was money that was supposed to go into the bank and was not money for buying illegal weapons. As far as they knew, the business of silencers and grenades that J.R. Olson was going to hand to them, they didn't know about that. They thought they were going over to see this Han Solo, the truck driver. At the conclusion of this case, I think that especially with regard to Coleman Barney, you will discover that the government is overreaching in the charges they've levied against him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. Ms. Hayden?
Judge, I have a coat that the juror requested. Can I pass it to her?
Yeah. You can take a break in place if you want again, folks, while I get set up.